Well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Naples School Open House and welcome you to the school year here at Naples Elementary. We are very excited to have your children for another year, or a new year, as the case may be. My name is Bethany Cavender. I'm a Title I parapro here at Naples. I've had other jobs in the past, school librarian, reading coach. I was a PTSA volunteer and a mom for years before that. I also managed the computer lab. I've forgotten that. My involvement here in Naples goes back to when my children were students here about 20 years ago, so I've been around a while. Anyway, the reason that you're listening to me today is twofold. One is that Mr. Morton asked me to do a short presentation on why breakfast eating is important to your children. And honestly, the other reason I'm doing this presentation to you in this manner is because I myself went back to school and this is one of the requirements. So you get to help me learn too. So you're students and you get to help me in my education. So that's kind of a neat turnaround for all of us here. The name of this presentation, of course, is why eating breakfast is important for students. It is close to my heart that, to see kids coming to school hungry and ill-prepared, it just breaks my heart. And that all started with the story of Alexander. Now, this is not the real Alexander. We can put his picture up here for you all to see, but he came to us one time, about 4 years ago, and he was in the first grade. He was quite a challenge, both academically and behaviorally. Alexander had some real challenges ahead of him, for him and for us as well. On the first day he came to us, he came around 10, right after recess, and it was first grade, they were having their snack. And so I walked into class and I asked him if he had his snack. And he said no. So we went to the cafeteria and he got some graham crackers and a little carton of milk, those milk cartons that the kids get. And he ate those graham crackers and drank about half the milk and he started to fold it up. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm going to save it for later. I'm going to put it in my backpack." And I said, "Well, buddy, it's not going to get home very well in your backpack." And he said, "But but it'll spill, so why don't you just drink it now?" And he said, "No, I really want to save it for later." So then I told him that he was going to be getting more milk later for lunch. And he had the bluest eyes and he looked at me and said, "You mean all of this is for me? And you're going to feed me later? I think I'm going to like it here." Even now when I tell that story, I get kind of choked up when I think of him. And it baffles me that in this day and age, with all that we have and all that we could do, this little boy was coming to school hungry. He was actually too hungry to learn. As we at Naples began to pay attention to that detail, he did begin to do better in school. Of course, he was not the model student. It's not a fix-all for everything. But he was not hungry. He was able to focus, and we were able to fill in some behavioral puzzle pieces for him, and we were able to help him academically with some things that he had missed before he moved on to a different school. And I really don't know what happened to him after that, but that one incident really does sort of stick in my mind. And when we talk about should we feed the kids, do we have to have school breakfast, I always think about him, and I always think, yeah, we really do. Anybody with a television or access to a television or walk through the grocery store is probably familiar with this little Kellogg's Mini Wheat guy, and I just put him up here because of his slogan, "Keep them full, keep them focused." And Kellogg's built their entire advertisement campaign around keeping your kids full for school and making sure they're ready to start the day. And that's a really great advertising campaign. However, there are studies that will show that students who start their day with breakfast, either at home or in school, are more successful. There are several areas of academic performance that improve in children who have eaten, and also children who eat breakfast exhibit less disruptive behavior than those who have not. It does make sense at a very basic level, doesn't it? You can't work if you're hungry. There are countless physiological reasons why this happens, and they all have to do with blood sugar and insulin and the effects of the food breaking the fast of your body. And really, you have been fasting for 8 hours while you're sleeping. unless, you know, you're getting up in the middle of the night eating all night long, and most of us don't do that. Some of us do, but most of us don't. But for this presentation, I'm going to leave those reasons and discussions out of the equation, and there are, you know, countless articles on the website. I'd be glad to direct you to them if you'd like. But we'll leave the mechanics out of it and just discuss breakfast effects on student performance. Children who eat breakfast before school show an increase in math scores, exhibit better problem-solving skills, show increased creativity, as well as better short-term memory, an increased attention span, and they are less likely to repeat a grade. Some studies go as far as to say they drop out less and they become better wage earners in our economy, and they contribute to society more, which is, you know, way in the future, which is not something we need to go into. But there have been studies that have shown these effects from eating breakfast. Abdullah Khan, in his 2006 dissertation from Murdoch University, has performed several tests and has done extensive research proving or validating the claim that problem-solving skills are much improved in breakfast eaters. Student needs to have all of these tools in their toolbox to be successful at school. If they don't work, if they're not fueled and ready to go, and these things aren't working in synchronicity, the student is not likely to be successful. The second point of our presentation is just to remind you that students who eat breakfast exhibit less disruptive behaviors than children who do not. In a 1999 study published in the Journal of Psychology and Behavior, showed that people who eat breakfast are in a better mood than those who don't. That's a big surprise. But take that to the next step. If your child comes to school hungry and is not given the opportunity to eat, it would stand to reason that this hungry child will soon become a tired and a cranky child. Honestly, folks, being hungry hurts. And it's beyond that when your stomach starts to rumble. I mean, when you're really hungry, it hurts. You can't think of anything but that gnawing feeling in your stomach. And when it feels bad, it leads to cranky. No fuel leads to tired. Tired and cranky children lead to disruption. In my experience, kids really don't verbalize that I'm hungry until much later. So that tired, cranky child who's poking the kid next to them just because he's feeling sets off a chain reaction. It snowballs. It's disruptive. He's got now the reputation in class that he's the troublemaker when he's really just hungry. So I stress again, if you are eating breakfast, you are less likely to be disruptive in class. That benefits this student. It also benefits this student and that student and that student, because a classroom does need to work as a team. Finally, and just to repeat, it is important that we give our children every possible tool to be successful students. As parents, we go out, we buy them backpacks, we buy them school supplies by the ton, and every article of clothing that we think they will need to be successful students. Because of the research, I would like to add that breakfast is also an important tool to help your children both academically and socially. You wouldn't dream of sending your child to school without the proper supplies. The proper supplies include breakfast. And thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
To be perfectly honest, we are struggling financially, and affording more food could be a problem.
Well, fortunately for us in Boundary County School District, we do have the federally funded breakfast program. So children are allowed and given every opportunity to eat free breakfast here at school every morning. If they come late, we certainly make every effort to make sure they eat. So if you're running late and they haven't had breakfast, we actually bring it to them because we think it's that important. Another way to combat that, of course, is planning ahead, having quick grab-and-go things at home. But, you know, if it's financially an issue, we do have breakfast here. So that would be the way I would go about in your situation. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Don't you think that school breakfast, especially if they're eating in the classroom, be disruptive?
We go back and forth with that all the time as a staff. We really do, because we have this, they're gonna bring their breakfast in the classroom, and then they're gonna spill milk all over the papers, and they're gonna get crumbs all over the place, and it's gonna be a big mess for the teacher to get up, and the kids are gonna play with their food. But honestly, most of our kids do get here on time to eat in the cafeteria. And in such case where the bell rings and they're still eating, we give them plenty of time to finish. In the cases where breakfast has been served in the classroom for different students, they're just so happy to be eating. We haven't had a problem with it, but we do have those discussions regularly at our staff meeting. I know in different schools in the district, they've tried having breakfast in the classroom. I believe they do in the high school with, different kinds of success. Maybe they don't do that any longer. I don't know if there's anyone here that has that knowledge, but we do go back and forth with that. But what we find is the disruption from having hungry kids is more than the disruption from having breakfast in class. So we make it work. Yes, ma'am?
He looks like our high schooler. Do they still serve breakfast in the high school?
They don't serve breakfast. We have a snack time that's at the beginning of second hour.
Right when that slump hits for most students, I would imagine.
Yes.
Which is when we built in our snack program here in school. And once again, if your kids don't have snack, we usually find snack to give them. So that's about the time we're serving snacks too. Are there any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
How healthy is the food you provide your students?
Once again, it's a federally funded program, and the federal funds, to have a federally funded program, they tie all sorts of regulations, restrictions, nutrition requirements in there. I honestly don't know exactly how it all plays out, but I do know that Marie, who is our cook here, and Tammy Schneider, who is our school district's overall food supervisor, would be happy to answer those questions. If you don't have the time to call them, you may always check on our school website, which is www.bcsd, Boundary County School District 101.com, and there is a nutrition link there which should answer all those questions for you. If you don't want to go through all that time, I would just shortcut it with a call to Tammy. She'd be happy to help you. Are there any other questions then? And once again, I thank you for being here this evening and invite you to go and visit with your classroom teachers, and thank you for listening to me, and thank you for helping me with this project. Have a good night. Bye.